So Roger Penske always has an ace up his sleeve. It really is kind of his MO. And when the Detroit Belle Isle race was reduced to just one race event, down from a doubleheader on the IndyCar calendar for 2022, I immediately assumed it was simply because of TV to keep the first race off of streaming services, such as, of course, Peacock. But it seems that now news has broken that there are bigger plans in the works for the Detroit Grand Prix. And it broke late last night that the Detroit Grand Prix is already in the early stages of being moved back to the downtown city streets. That hasn't happened since this hat was particularly relevant way back in 1991. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the proposed circuit layout and the comparisons between that layout and the new or the old layout from back in 1991. Let's get into it. Now, as you guys know, I've had an on-again, off-again relationship with the Belle Isle race in Detroit. At some points, I described it as the worst IndyCar race, the worst circuit on the IndyCar calendar. I have since softened a bit on that feeling because I think a lot of the doubleheader events that we have seen on Detroit's Belle Isle course have been quite good, quite entertaining, and quite challenging for the drivers. So, believe it or not, I was a bit disappointed when we heard there was only going to be one event on Belle Isle next year. But like I said in the intro, a much clearer picture is beginning to develop. And it seems as though Penske Corporation, which runs the Detroit Grand Prix, is trying to get the city streets to host the race once again. Now, why that is seems to be a bit of a mystery, though it seems like from some locals that have kind of contacted me on Twitter when I've been talking about this today, they have said that really the Belle Isle Park race is not exactly popular with a lot of the locals. Of course, Belle Isle Park is a beautiful place to host a race, but that also is a beautiful place to enjoy the summer months. And obviously, though the Detroit Grand Prix usually happens pretty early in the year, apparently the locals are still unhappy about it. So perhaps shutting down city streets would be a better option. I guess that's where we're headed. Okay, so let's read the statement from, I guess this is the Detroit Grand Prix, but of course that's part of Penske Entertainment, part of Penske Corporation. And this is what they had to say. Organizers are exploring a return to downtown Detroit in 2023. The Detroit Grand Prix has built a great tradition in the Motor City, and we are excited to add to the event's legacy next year and beyond. The Grand Prix will return to Belle Isle June 3rd to the 5th, 2022. While we have the option of extending the current agreement with the state of Michigan to host the Grand Prix on Belle Isle through 2024, we are exploring the option of returning the event to a downtown street circuit beginning in 2023. The Grand Prix began as a downtown event hosted on the streets of Detroit from 1982 to 1991 before making the transition to Belle Isle. An annual summertime racing festival on the streets of Detroit would represent a connection to the rich heritage of the Grand Prix, the opportunity to engage with broad audience, and provide an even bigger boost to the local economy while adding the energy and momentum that is building downtown and along our beautiful waterfront. As plans continue to develop, we look forward to providing an update on the exciting future of the Grand Prix. So, this is what the track looks like. Let me get it up here. So this is the track proposal they have shown off. And obviously, it's a bit simplistic. I think that's fair to say. It's definitely a little bit like someone stretched Indianapolis a little bit and then took a hammer to it. Then again, it is kind of funny that the two races that potentially Roger Penske will have the biggest controlling interest in, those being the Indianapolis 500 and the Detroit Grand Prix, will have rectangular-shaped circuits. Ironically, I think also moving in a counterclockwise direction, which is, of course, typical of oval racing. I know a lot of people made a lot of hype about the Bahrain oval race that Formula One was going to host. This very much looks like... I mean, that's Indianapolis. Now, a lot of the photos that they have shown, or the mock-ups they've shown, and none of them are in high quality, so I'm not going to put them in this video, have shown that a lot of these streets appear to be fairly narrow, and we saw how well that worked out at Nashville, though, of course, Nashville I think most people would admit was a very exciting event. So they weren't lying when they said there's a lot of heritage from the previous Detroit Grand Prix downtown circuit, which of course was run from 1982 to 1991. And I've got an overlay of the 1991 version of the circuit with this one, so we can kind of see what it looks like. Obviously, as you can see, the 1991 layout was much more complex, but it took up a lot more of the city. You can see this is, in a lot of ways, a smaller cross-section of the city, and just so we can show this off a little bit. So this is what it... I'm just going to kind of flash this back and forth a little bit. I tried to line these up as best I could. This map comes from Wikipedia, the one from 1991, so it's not, GPS totally accurate, but I think I lined it up as best as I could. And what we're going to do here, after I flash this a couple more times, is we're actually going to show off some of the corners that are the same and some of the corners that are different. So we're going to get rid of the background one, or the one without this overlay here, so I can show off. Oh, I clicked on the wrong clip. Here we go. So we have actually one of the corners appears to be fairly similar to the 1991 circuit, and it's this chicane here, which I guess at one point was called the Ford Corner. Turns 16 and 17 on the old circuit appears to be, if not the exact same streets, very similar in layout. But you can see the difference between this and the 1991 track in that there was a chicane. The straightaway actually came down all the way into this kind of port here. And obviously the first corner, which I actually, before this was announced, I'd actually rewatched the 1991 Detroit Grand Prix. And actually that first corner on the old circuit was really quite good. As you can see, it's a lot different. Now it's going to be a much straighter shot. The pit lane is virtually in the same area, though it's going to be entered from a different side, and it looks like it's going to be significantly shorter, at least based on my lining up in the map. And what I tried to do, again, to use like a Doc Brown quote, it's not to scale, or it's unpainted. I didn't have time to paint it. It's not completely perfectly lined up, but it does seem like the pit lane's smaller. As you can see, there are some of the side streets that are still used for this racetrack. A lot of it's just this. I mean, and one of the big things about Detroit, the original city circuit, as you can see, the Goodyear Tunnel and the Larned Tunnel, Larned Tunnel, and the Goodyear Tunnel. Those were two kind of major features on the circuit, and neither of those features are going to be seen on this new proposed layout. Again, you can kind of see it. It's kind of overlaid, but the circuit actually comes down, I believe it's East Jefferson Street, does a hairpin, and then comes back. That's just a little bit of the old circuit over there where the old Turn 10 would have been. That's where the hairpin now that brings the circuit back around. So not a ton is similar. It's in a similar spot, but really the paddock essentially is going to be in a similar spot to where it used to be, and the final corners, 16 and 17, are going to be more or less where they were in 1991. But this is very much a new circuit designed for IndyCar, if indeed they do go there. And I think they will go there, let's be honest. So let's take a look again at the new Detroit circuit. I do think that there's definitely going to be some passing opportunities, as a lot of people continue to point out. I mean, essentially, this is just really long straights where you're going to be able to abuse the push to pass and outbrake people. It's not very technical. It's going to be pretty quick. I can imagine that back straight is going to be really quick. Again, it's hard. I've never been to actually downtown Detroit proper, so I can't say how long exactly that back straight's going to be. But judging by how big the paddock is, I would say that's going to be a pretty good little stretch there. In some ways, there's almost... I feel like this is inspired a little bit by Nashville. Like I said, some of the streets are quite narrow, but I also see that philosophy of just having extremely long straightaways and tight corners, and having that create the excitement of the event. I don't know, man. I definitely think, I mean, this is the thing that we do know about Penske Corporation, right? Is that they don't really say anything until it's pretty well far down the road. I would expect this to happen in 2023. I would expect that the Detroit Grand Prix is going to move. Whether that's a good move, I mean, it remains to be seen. In a lot of ways, they moved to Belle Isle because the downtown circuit didn't necessarily work. It's kind of ironic that it's flipped. The way I see it, and I said this on Twitter, is, if you want to run an oval in Michigan, there's a perfectly good one in Brooklyn where you could run a 500-mile race. And also the question I would have is, where is this going to go in the calendar? Because will you be able to shut down the downtown streets in May? Would you have to move this race to the fall? And if you do run this race in the fall, what would take the second or the race after Indy slot on the calendar? So there's some things to consider. It's definitely been interesting and definitely a little bit unexpected, I would say, that they're going back to the downtown. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think this is going to be quite divisive on whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.